last time I prepared a whole detailed script and then read it, and we went through the PowerPoint together. This time I'm going to try to freewheel it a little bit, and we'll see which one you guys prefer. So our goal today is to talk about argument, and you'll notice there's two different definitions of argument. So a lot of times people think about argument as a disagreement between two or more people, where there's one clear side and another clear side, and they're battling for dominance. In our class, we're going to adopt a more technical definition, which means one attempt by a rhetor to convince their audience of a particular claim by using evidence which is connected to the claim through reasoning. So the argument is the act, the thing, not the relationship between the two people. A lot of argument discussions and research come back to Stephen Toulmin, who's a British logician, actually still alive, I think, working in Cambridge, Oxford. And basically what he did is he devised a system for analyzing arguments. The system has three main parts, which we're going to talk about today: the claim, the evidence or grounds, and the reasoning or warrant. Grounds and warrant are Toulmin's original terms, but a lot of writers and teachers find that evidence and reasoning just sounds a little more familiar and a little more easy to grasp. He also has three additional parts that we're not going to talk about in this course, which are backing, qualifiers, and rebuttals. If you look up the full Toulmin system online, you'll often see these, but we don't really need to cover them in this course. So just to break it down a little further, the claim is the argument you're trying to prove. It's the thing that's in doubt. The evidence is the new information that you give to prove the claim. So for example, in 2012, 15% of students reported that they were late for a class because they could not park. That's the new information that we might give you to support a claim about needing more parking. The reasoning is the most complex and most difficult to really conceptualize here, but it's this tenuous connection between the evidence and the claim, right? It's why the evidence proves the claim. So for example, 15% of students reporting that they're late is persuasive evidence that we need more parking because UCCS doesn't want students to be late to class. 15% is too high of a mark. That's an unacceptably high level. And we understand that if UCCS built more spaces, then less students would be late to class. And all of these form the part of the reasoning for this argument. So one of the trickier parts of talking about claims and evidence, and I think one of the problems students face often when they try to write thesis statements, is that it can be hard to identify whether something is a claim or not. So if we start with something like UCCS should have more parking, that's fairly obviously a claim. We talked in class about the Earth being round and how there are people around the globe who might dispute that. There's a Flat Earth Society in the US. I have 2 feet. If I was standing in front of you and you could see my actual feet, then it's not really a claim. I mean, it's obvious to all of us and indisputable. But if I had shoes on, or if I'm talking to you over the internet like I am now, you can't absolutely be certain, so I could try to provide you some information. The only one of these which is absolutely not a claim is I like Kanye West. And it's really the word like here that's the problem. If I were to say something like Kanye West is a fabulous rapper, or Kanye West is an intolerable human being, both of those are disputable statements. But my own personal internal feelings about Kanye West can't be verified by you. There's no way for you to test this or really for me to convince you of it. So it's definitely not a claim. So how can we tell? Are there some tests we can run to tell if we have a claim or not? So first, can someone reasonably disagree with it? Is there anyone out there who could, be sane and still disagree with the thing we said? Can we provide some evidence to support it? And can we state an alternate or an opposite? So if we think back to the previous slide, we can say things like UCCS should have less parking. The Earth is a cube. I have 1 foot. However, the statement, you don't like Kanye West, again, there's not any real way to verify that. On the other hand, if I said Kanye West is a great rapper, and you said Kanye West is a terrible rapper, then we're focused in more on a claim. One of the primary focuses of this course is stasis theory. And in stasis theory, we try to divide claims into their types. and think about how they work structurally. So some types of claims that we can make are claims of fact, so things that are objectively verifiable out in the real world. We could go and measure them and actually find out somehow. UCCS has 10,000 students, but only 2,000 parking spaces, and Colorado Springs is increasing in population. Claims of definition or categorization, which we read about a little last week. So for instance, UCCS is a tier 2 school, right? There's rankings for schools, and we're going to say UCCS fits into the second tier. We'll often find that the debate about abortion and the right to choose often comes down to definitions. If you define a fetus as a human being, then you think that abortion is murder, and then you often think that abortion should be illegal. On the other hand, if you don't think that a fetus is a human being, then abortion is a medical procedure for a woman, and therefore should not be illegal. So often people's opinions on this come back down to these simple questions of definition. Claims about quality or evaluation. How good or bad is a thing? So for instance, UCCS is a good value. Kim Jong-un, the dictator of North Korea, is evil. Claims about policy, which tend to be the most complex, which is things that people or groups should do, right? So you can usually identify these by that word should. UCCS should build more parking. The federal government should legalize marijuana. Often these claims don't exist in isolation, so usually we start from facts and build upwards, so that claims of policy often involve the previous claims within them as well. The evidence is the new information you provide that proves the claim, or that attempts to prove the claim. So for instance, we could have facts, which we talked about before is a bit problematic. Things like, notice this is an old slide. Donald Trump is the president of the United States. Probabilities, people who smoke tobacco are 50 times more likely to develop lung cancer. Statistics, over 10,000 people have died in Syria this year. Even stories, like the common story of the boy who cried wolf. If you walk someone through that entire story and they see how the situation ended up for the boy getting eaten by wolves when no one came to help him, that story makes a point, right? It supports a claim that we shouldn't lie to people, that people won't trust us if we lie, but the story itself becomes evidence to support the claim. And also images, images and figures can often be support for claims. So for instance, for those of you into conspiracy theories, there are lots of people who talk about the assassination of President Kennedy and how the official government report says that the assassin was behind him. However, direct video of the assassination shows President Kennedy's head moving back and to the left as he is shot. And intuitively, we all kind of know that if you're shot from behind, your head would move forward, and if you're shot from the front, your head would move back into the left, which is counter evidence against the government's official story of the assassination. Reasoning. Again, this is the most complex of the three. The reasoning is often implicit in an argument, which means not stated. So the author or the person making the argument doesn't always need to tell us the reasoning explicitly, but we do need to know that it's there. We need to agree with them about the reasoning. There could be many different ways to state it. If we were to break an argument down and try to identify the reasoning, 20 of us may come up with 20 different ways to state it. It can be hard to identify, but I think most importantly, for a claim to be proven true, both the evidence and the reasoning must also be true. So let's look a little bit at some reasoning. So if we look at a claim like Colorado Springs is increasing in population, we could provide some evidence for that, such as over 2,000 new homes were built in Colorado Springs in 2012, but only 500 homes were destroyed. So what is the reasoning that connects this evidence to this claim? Well, some of the underlying assumptions here and some of the reasoning is that if new homes are being built, it must be because new people are moving into those homes or because they want to move into those homes. Another piece of reasoning is that the only empty homes or the homes being lost are the ones being officially counted as destroyed. There's not lots of homes sitting empty somewhere. And another one is that there aren't more people living alone rather than living in one big house with their family. So perhaps the people are just moving in together because of poor economy or loss of jobs or something like that. If we look at some of the reasoning for a claim of definition, we have one like UCCS is a tier 2 school. In this case, we're going back to what we discussed before, which is using a source of authority as the evidence for the definition. We saw sort of acknowledge that the U.S. News and Daily Report is sort of the official and recognized source for deciding who gets to be in which category, and they ranked it as a tier 2 school. So the reasoning here primarily is that we trust in this source to be the author of this decision. Also, obviously, we're assuming that they didn't put in UCCS by mistake and actually meant like the University of California Coastal State or something. Claims of evaluation. So the claims of evaluation tend to be a little different from claims of definition in that evaluation tends to move us up and down a scale, right? So from good to bad, from efficient to inefficient, where claims of definition tend to put us clearly in one category or another. So if we say UCCS is a good school, we've moved it further up that scale towards good. As evidence, we could say something like 90% of people who graduate from UCCS make more than $30,000 a year. But is this effective evidence? Do we feel that this evidence actually proves this claim? So, for instance, we might start with the actual dollar figure. If you've graduated from a university, is $30,000 enough? Is that a reasonable salary for a college graduate? If you don't agree with that, if you think that that figure is too low, then you've disagreed with the reasoning of this argument. You haven't denied the actual salary figure that UCCS gave. You haven't disagreed with the evidence they provided. You've disagreed with the reasoning in that you don't think this evidence proves this claim. Another way to think about this here might be, what is the actual purpose of college? Is the goal of going to college to make more money? If you believe that the best way to judge a college is by the experiences it provides, the actual quality of the education it provides, the sort of growth of the citizen and the expansion of their mind, then using dollar amounts as evidence may not be convincing, and therefore, again, you might disagree with the reasoning of this argument. Reasoning for a claim of policy. Policy arguments tend to be the most complex, and they're going to be extremely layered. There's going to be many levels to the argument often, but here we see just some visual evidence, right? Just a picture. Some of the reasoning here that connects this picture to the claim. We're assuming that this picture actually shows reality, that it shows UCCS. We're assuming that UCCS, again, doesn't want their parking lot to look like this, and that this is actually a representative sample, that we didn't take this picture, right before a popular basketball game or, on parent visitation day. We took this on a normal day at a normal time. Another thing to note about arguments that I think will show up a lot in your own writing is that arguments usually form chains. We build from one piece of evidence to a claim, and then that claim becomes evidence for a new claim, and then that claim becomes evidence for a new claim, and so on, so that we can build complex, elaborate arguments based off very grounded, simple pieces of evidence. So for instance, the claim that UCCS is a good school could be proved by a statement like UCCS prepares people for their jobs. But do we believe that statement? Do we believe that UCCS prepares people for their jobs? As soon as we begin to question, as soon as we wonder, that then becomes a claim that needs evidence to prove it. So this has now become a claim, which is UCCS prepares people for their jobs, and we can provide some evidence for that, like graduates from UCCS get good jobs. Then immediately we question that again, because we're inquisitive, thorough people. So that becomes a claim. Graduates from UCCS get good jobs. And we need to provide even more evidence, which is graduates from UCCS make an average of $10,000 a year more than people with a high school diploma. Obviously, we could debate the reasoning, and I've pulled these statistics out of thin air, so we don't actually have defense of this argument here, but we can see how the chain works, proceeding from the bottom level of evidence all the way up to the top level claim. Similarly, we often don't think that one, again, this is a bit dated slide here with presidential elections from 4 years ago, but we often don't rely on one piece of evidence to prove a claim, right? So we feel that a good solid claim, something that's central to the argument, needs more than one piece of evidence